Good morning, everybody. This is a live severe weather briefing with a lot to talk about, including an ice storm that's just been issued for central and western Oklahoma. That's the purple area you can see in the upper left image. Also, the 3-kilometer NAM forecast ice accumulation there. You can see the stripe right through the Oklahoma City area. And then we've got Tropical Storm Zeta, which is nearing hurricane strength. Maximum sustained winds of 70 miles an hour. That pressure is down to 992 millibars. There you can see the satellite image from Radar Omega. But I really want to start first by focusing on this ice storm, realizing though that we've almost made the decision to deploy to Cancun, but you can see Tropical Storm Zeta there right in the center of that screen is looking a little bit weird on approach to Cancun, almost similar to what Delta looked like when it was approaching. You do have this deep convection, cold cloud tops, especially kind of in the southwestern semicircle. A lot of these are wrapping around too on the northern side, but it just looks a little bit blobby, for lack of a better term. You kind of have these little blobs feeding in all over the place, but it does look like a tropical storm to me. It is forecast to intensify into a Category 1 hurricane on approach to Cancun. Some of the models even showed intensifying a little bit further than that. The National Hurricane Center official forecast track actually has it with 90-mile-an-hour sustained winds, pretty close to that, on approach to Cozumel, Cancun area overnight tonight. So we almost deployed after this, but it just looks like it is struggling a little bit with that wind shear, and similar to Delta, where there was really not much of a reason for its weakening on approach to the northern Yucatan. It was supposed to be a Category 4 storm, came in as a Category 2, but started getting this weird appearance and even had a west to east oriented line of convection that almost looked like it was a temperature gradient or something inside of the hurricane, but it does look like it's going to come in maybe as a Category 1 hurricane across the northern Yucatan, and then it enters the southern Gulf of Mexico, where many of the models show it re-intensifying on approach to the central Gulf Coast. But a lot of the forecast track depends on many factors, including the ejection of the upper level storm system that's forecast right now is cutting off near the Four Corners region. That's supposed to eject over the southern plains. And these closed lows are highly uncertain in the way that they eject from the mountains. They're in the process of closing off. They're basically a bowling ball with minimum steering current, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to how they eject and the timing of that ejection, and all of that is going to influence the exact track of Zeta, but most of the models do show it approaching the southeastern Louisiana coastline on Wednesday, with impacts in the Alabama and Mississippi coastline as well. It does approach as a Category 1 hurricane. The ship model actually has it re-intensifying into a Category 2, but that's over the open Gulf of Mexico, and the increasing shear ahead of that upper level low could play a role. But because that upper level low is more closed off as opposed to an open wave, I do think that the wind shear out ahead of it may be a little bit lesser than we might think when there's a normal pickup of a tropical cyclone by an upper level storm system. A closed upper level low really has minimal vorticity advection as well, as opposed to an open wave where a lot of times that southwesterly wind shear will propagate way east of the upper level low. Closed low is much more compact with its ejection. So really it is unclear how the wind shear is going to affect Zeta when it enters the open Gulf of Mexico. But I could actually see it being a little bit stronger. And back to the ice storm, with that ice storm warning being issued, here is the forecast by the NAM, the high resolution NAM, showing over an inch of ice accumulation. And that includes Oklahoma City, Norman, Oklahoma City Metro in there. And let me expand this ice accumulation map really quick. And some of the other high resolution models are showing even more. In fact, the HRRR, I think, is showing 2 to 3 inches of ice accumulation. And often what happens down here in the southern plains, and you get these early season icing events, or even in the winter, a lot of times it's warm preceding these Arctic fronts, and then the freezing rain starts, the temperature drops below freezing, you have a relatively shallow but sub-freezing air mass at the low levels. You have an above freezing air mass or an inversion layer above the cold layer. So you get liquid water, basically snowflakes will melt in that warm layer, and then they fall into the sub-freezing layer. They freeze on impact. Sometimes you even get thunderstorms out here. A couple of my friends in Norman are reporting thunder and sleet in the Oklahoma City area. And a couple of these models are showing 2 to 3 inches of freezing rain. And often what happens down here is that ice will accumulate on the power lines and the trees, knocking down trees everywhere, knocking out power for many homes. But usually the roads will remain relatively clear out there, depending on how warm it was in the days leading up to this event. Don't make any assumptions though, that's for sure. And I think that most of this on the northwest side of the freezing rain is going to be sleet accumulation, which could... Actually, you can get more traction on sleet than even snow. So the sleet accumulation out here could minimize those problems across western Oklahoma and northern Oklahoma. But this looks like pure freezing rain across central Oklahoma. And now I'm going to break down the sounding for you. Then we'll go over the surface map. And then we'll look at the radar and show you exactly where that heaviest freezing rain is falling, up to moderate freezing rain happening. But here is that inversion layer that I was talking about, which rises above freezing. This right here is that freezing line, that diagonal blue line on the sounding. So this little lobe here that rises above freezing, that's the above freezing layer. And when that layer is sufficiently thick, then it will melt the snowflakes that are developing up in this area, in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. They fall into that warm layer, they melt, and then they fall into this sub-freezing layer at the surface. And if that sub-freezing layer is thick enough, then those droplets can freeze into sleet particles, which are just single frozen raindrops. But if that sub-freezing layer is thin enough, then liquid rain, supercooled water falls into that environment, and then anything that it hits, when it hits the ground, is freezes on impact, and then you get that accumulation of ice. Here you can see that layer of the Arctic air mass with those winds below that layer out of the north, reinforcing and deepening that cold layer, helping to battle against warm advection. And then above that, you get the warm advection. Southwesterly low-level jet there, pumping moisture northward over top that cold air. And you can see that it results in some upward motion there in the low levels, basically 700 millibars and below. That usually leads to kind of smaller raindrop sizes. And when you don't have as much lift at 500 millibars, a lot of times, this is just a textbook freezing rain sounding, where you have most of your lift due to warm advection rather than the jet dynamics, like what we saw with that band of snowfall across northern Colorado yesterday, dumping up to 1.5 feet of snow from Red Feather Lakes through Fort Collins, definitely acting to temper those wildfires out there, the East Troublesome Fire and the Cameron Peak Fire, thankfully. But here with this freezing rain and ice storm sounding, most of the lift is concentrated at the lower levels, and that's from the warm advection over top of this shallow Arctic air mass, and that's leading to the development of precipitation, even some thunderstorms, elevated thunderstorms over top that shallow cold air mass. But you could definitely see those northerlies up to about 800 millibars. So that's a pretty shallow depth for that Arctic air mass, probably about in this region. And then the winds shift over to a southwesterly direction, and you get a low-level jet of 50 knots out of the southwest there. That's why we're talking inches of ice accumulation across southern Oklahoma, and I'm probably going to roll down there today once the Surginator sensor arrives, and then we're going to intercept this ice storm on the way down to Hurricane Zeta with that Surginator. So here's the surface map. Oklahoma City is right at freezing right now, reporting sleet with that northerly wind, 32 degrees, a dew point of 30. Should wet bulb at around 31 degrees, bringing it down even a little bit more. That's actually freezing rain, that little squiggle mark right there. These triangles, those are sleet. So up in Enid, you're getting sleet accumulation, and the NAM shows a little bit less ice accumulation across the western and northern fringe of that precipitation, because that's largely going to be sleet accumulation. But really depending on how thick that warm layer is and how thick the cold layer is able to reinforce, you've got temperatures in the teens though here in western Kansas. You're waking up to incredibly cold temperatures. Single digits up here in Colorado, even below zero where I'm located. So definitely is quite cold. So this Arctic air mass is continuously deepening, especially on the western and northern side of that precipitation shield. So I wouldn't be surprised to see accumulating freezing rain there, and then accumulating sleet, and then a stripe of freezing rain across southwest Oklahoma into central Oklahoma, even up into the Tulsa area. It's definitely going to get down to the frozen precipitation. But right now, that freezing line has just moved through Oklahoma City. Norman is a little bit above freezing. You've got above freezing there in Lawton, freezing out there in Altus with sleet being reported. This is that freezing line that I'm trying to draw here. Something like this, I would say. With just to the northwest and along that line, freezing rain, sleet happening as well. Kansas City, you're down into the upper 20s, but most of that precipitation is just off to your south in west central Missouri, southeastern Kansas. Wichita is over to light snow, 2 miles visibility, and light snow there. Freezing rain down in Ponca City, 32 degrees as well. And then you rise above freezing with 3-star rain, moderate rain up there. But moderate freezing rain has been reported just to the northwest of that freezing line. And we're going to break down the radar as well coming up here next. But first, let's go back to Tropical Storm Zeta that has just been wobbling, basically stationary, just to the southeast of Cancun. I woke up this morning thinking that there was a chance I would wake up and see a pinhole eye, an exploding hurricane, but thankfully that didn't happen, and it is on approach to the northern Yucatan, forecast to be a Category 1 hurricane, but it is getting that weird kind of blobby appearance. Even though there are cold cloud tops up here with this hurricane, it just looks like it's more of a blob that is approaching the northern Yucatan. Look at that. You can really see it on the infrared. And even though you do have these deep convective cells in here, they just look a little bit blobby and disorganized as opposed to that perfectly circular donut of a central dense overcast. And something similar happened to Delta after reaching that Category 4 strength on approach to the northern Yucatan. So I'm just thinking that this might even be a weaker storm than that. But still, the NHC is forecasting it to strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane on approach, 85 to 90 mile an hour max sustained winds. And it is a little further south, so it looks like it's going to track right over near or just to the south of the Cozumel area. Cozumel is the island just offshore of Playa del Carmen, a big vacation spot. I know a lot of people are out here vacationing. Even my friend meteorologist Aaron Tuttle is vacationing in Puerto Morelos right now. That's one of the areas that we were covering with Hurricane Delta yesterday. He said that they're not going to evacuate the hotels on the coast if it stays as a Category 1 hurricane. If it is a little bit stronger than that, then they'll do those evacuations and probably try to move everybody inland into the conference centers or those inland hotels. I would try to get them to allow you to sign a waiver and even stay in your room if possible, because those hotels right along the coast from Cancun down through Cozumel, Puerto Morelos, those are capable of withstanding a major hurricane out there, but for some reason, for insurance purposes, they like to evacuate everybody inland. But this forecast track is a little further south, and a lot of this depends on a high pressure area that is forecast to build in across the eastern Gulf of Mexico and the southeast U.S. And if that high pressure is stronger, then that means that this forecast track is going to be even further west, and then that would take it back into that same zone impacted by Hurricane Laura and Delta. Hopefully, though, this high pressure that's forecast to build in over the eastern Gulf of Mexico will be just how it's advertised, and maybe a little bit further east track. But then that would take it exactly where Sally made landfall. So right now, though, it looks like a southeastern Louisiana landfall into Biloxi area. We're going to deploy the Surginator sensor. We have 3 of them. One of them will probably deploy in Grand Island, one in Biloxi area, maybe also Dauphin Island. We're going to have to do that all on Wednesday morning. But I'm waiting here for the Surginator to arrive through Fedex before we head out. And then we're going to blast through the ice storm in Oklahoma all the way down, drive down to the Gulf Coast, and then deploy that Surginator Wednesday morning just in time for the Wednesday afternoon and evening landfall out there. But the exact track depends on the ejection of that upper level low from the west, from the southern Rockies and the southern plains, and also depends on the strength of that high that is forecast to build in. So I'm going to do a little bit of a discussion of those upper level features. And first I want to mention that there's an extreme fire danger across southern California on the backside of this upper level low that's trying to close off over the Four Corners region. There's going to be some incredible offshore flow on the backside of that little cutoff lobe that is basically getting absorbed by this cutoff system. but extreme offshore gap winds coming in here to Southern California, and that's why there's an extreme fire danger in that higher terrain outside of Los Angeles, including Los Angeles, basically Southern California on the backside of that storm system. That's where the most extreme winds are going to be. So critical fire danger there in Southern California, and I'm going to show those alerts as well. So far today, though, you've got warm advection, a little bit of vorticity advection still across the southern plains. You got a shallow Arctic air mass that's surging south through the area and deepening. This is a textbook ice storm with this cold front surging southeast, acting as a barrier, a trapped current, density current, surging off to the south to the east of those mountains, and then an upper level storm system lagging back over the southwest, closing off, and then moving over top that cold air mass, bringing with it warm advection precipitation and an ice storm. But you got Zeta approaching the northern Yucatan, and its turn to the north depends on how strong and compact this anticyclone is that builds into the southeastern U.S. and the northern Gulf of Mexico. Once this thing consolidates, then that's going to allow this hurricane to turn to the north on the west side of that high, likely approaching the north-central Gulf of Mexico. But then as this cutoff low ejects across the southern plains, that's going to turn it off to the northeast even more rapidly. But this system, being a closed-off upper-level low, is actually going to weaken, and I don't think there's going to be as much southwesterly wind shear out ahead of the system as advertised. I think that this high pressure is going to solidify over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico and Florida and the southeastern U.S. and lead to a turn off to the north into the central Gulf of Mexico. But that's this morning, and stepping forward with time, this is actually on Tuesday, and then I'm going to show you the map later. This is Tuesday afternoon here, and the GFS, operational GFS, is showing Zeta emerging off the northern Yucatan, re-intensifying, and here is this high pressure, and a lobe actually extends all the way across the northern Gulf of Mexico, but this high pressure should consolidate across the southeastern U.S. and the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, and that will allow Zeta to turn off to the north toward the central Gulf Coast. And then you've got this bowling ball of an upper-level storm system that's ejecting, even acting to build a little bit of ridging out ahead of it as well. But the timing of the ejection of this closed upper-level low, the closing off of this anticyclone off to the east, and then that squeeze play, steering Zeta off to the north toward the central Gulf Coast region. That's really what we're dealing with right now. Stepping forward to Wednesday, I'll show you what the GFS is showing. But keep in mind that the tracking of this system is still highly uncertain because of the ejection of this closed upper level low. It's not an open wave, which are a lot more predictable. The timing are more predictable. The shape of that upper system is more predictable as well. This is a closed off upper level low with these circular contours of height and vorticity there. The wind likes to be parallel to these contours, so you're not seeing as much vorticity advection as you'll see with an open wave. But this has a likely minimal hurricane Zeta, maybe a strong tropical storm coming in to southeastern Louisiana on Wednesday afternoon or evening. And that's because this Bermuda high closes off just a bit off the southeastern coast. And if it closes off a bit earlier and further east, and that could mean a further east track near Mobile and even the Florida Panhandle definitely could be in play. If this high pressure is even stronger and we have a slower ejection of this closed upper level low, then it's possible that Zeta could be further west over the Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Delta landfall zone. So we just got to keep a very close eye on this push-pull action between the ejecting closed upper level low and that high pressure over the southeastern U.S. and northern Gulf of Mexico, and we'll see how it ejects. This is the official National Hurricane Center forecast track this morning. Pretty much in agreement with those global models. The hurricane models are coming in agreement. If anything, it has moved a little bit south over Playa del Carmen, directly over Cozumel. That's going to happen late tonight. And then it re-intensifies again. The Hurricane Center has it intensifying back up to 80-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And then upon the arrival of that upper-level low, this system's expected to turn off to the northeast, likely going to be weakening when it approaches the Gulf Coast because of some cooler waters that often happen this time of year, near the late fall in the northern Gulf of Mexico, some shallower water up there. We've had a lot of hurricanes to dredge up that colder water located just below the surface. And there also could be a tornado potential with this system getting picked up by that closed upper low, just slight increasing southwesterly flow and associated with it. we're going to be on waterspout and tornado patrol as well here across the northern Gulf of Mexico. Looking at the intensity models, look at the ship model there, forecasting a re-intensification of Zeta into a Category 2 storm at about 60 hours in the Gulf of Mexico on approach to the northern Gulf. None of the models showed intensification beyond Category 1, low-end Category 1 as it passes over the northern Yucatan. But still there is a potential for intensification on approach. Maybe it reaches 90-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Probably I don't think it does based on the satellite presentation that I'm seeing so far this morning. But it is intensifying despite that. So we definitely need to keep a close eye. And as I mentioned, I was going to talk about that extreme fire danger that's in effect across Southern California. Unfortunately, it looks like it's your turn once again to get in on this extreme fire danger. Critical even in southern Nevada, including the mountains outside of Las Vegas, and critical fire danger as well across the northern valley there, including the Sierra Nevadas and the coastal ranges, as there's also going to be strong offshore flow up here. But the strongest offshore flow is going to be right on the backside of that closed upper low, just as we discussed. And these are going to be, if fires do get going, they're going to develop in the higher terrain and then rage down toward the coast. Those strong northerlies, fast-moving fires likely to happen here. So now let's go back to the satellite image here. And I also want to show you some radar, show you what's happening right now in terms of the frozen precipitation and the ice storm impacting portions of Oklahoma. There you can see that ice storm warning in the purple right there. And let's see what we got here. Ice accumulations of up to 1/2 inch will be common. Some locations are receiving upwards of an inch. And some accumulations of sleet across western and northern Oklahoma, definitely a possibility. But here's the precipitation. Sorry for those text messages. Those are just some storm chaser friends that are talking some noise this morning. But here you can see some heavier precipitation. This convective precipitation right here is right along that boundary where it begins to sag below freezing. Oklahoma City, though, is at 32 degrees. Moderate freezing rain happening right here in this swath, including Edmond, Oklahoma City, back toward Altus as well. Wichita Mountains getting in that freezing precipitation. This down here is all just liquid precipitation, and that includes Norman right now, which is in the mid-30s, but it does get below freezing here on the backside. Quite a bit of freezing rain as well. Let me turn down the audio. There we go. Test, still working. Testing, yep, so my audio is still working. So this is the ice storm that is happening across the southern plains in Oklahoma. This is why there has been an upgrade to ice storm warning across this region. We just looked at the surface map. A lot of freezing precipitation is being reported. Freezing rain, sleet. Ponca City is at freezing. You're still getting some light to moderate freezing rain up there, but the heaviest swath is closer to Oklahoma City through Stillwater, up through Ponca City. Definitely getting some significant ice accumulations there. And this precipitation is going to last for a while, through tomorrow actually. This just wave after wave of frozen precipitation is going to come through here. Looks like some bright banding happening aloft as well as those snowflakes are falling into that warm layer, getting some liquid water accumulation before they remelt completely and then fall into that shallow sub-freezing layer at the surface, and then super cooled water accumulating on those surfaces. So this is the ice storm that's underway, and you can also see winter storm warnings throughout the Texas Panhandle. Additionally, looks like freezing rain and sleet also expected out there. Probably more sleet in the Texas Panhandle, where you do have a deeper cold pool out there in the Texas Panhandle. But certainly does look like a substantial winter storm continuing. These winter storm warnings are continuing across the southern mountains of Colorado, where heavier snow is persisting this morning. And once the Surginator arrives, we're going to head southeast, barrel into this ice storm, sample that, and then we're going to head down to the Gulf Coast to deploy the Surginator. All of that, though, depends on the arrival of the Surginator this morning through Fedex. There you can see more of that frozen precipitation. I think most of this convection is a sleet, freezing rain, cold rain, lightning type of a mixture, and then that comes through, and then on the back side of this precipitation, that's when you're starting to get that shift over to freezing rain. Out here, then you're getting pure sleet coming into the Elk City area, up toward Clinton. The ice storm warning is for near just to the east of Elk City. Clinton, you're included in that. Mostly sleet, though, to the west of the ice storm warning. Altus, right in the middle of the ice storm warning. So is Oklahoma City as well. So we're going to head down and sample some of these ice accumulations. Let's pull up the Mesonet here really quickly. Mesonet.org. The Oklahoma Mesonet, just to get an idea of what's going on out there. Look at air temperature first. So here is the Oklahoma Mesonet. Let me shift on over here. So here is the Oklahoma Mesonet showing that freezing line, which is indicated by the yellow stripe. You can see that Oklahoma City just now dropping below freezing, especially the west side and north side of Oklahoma City. Guthrie down to 31 degrees. A little bit of a ripple here due to terrain, but really sub-freezing across western Osage County as well, including Ponca City. And definitely dropping into the 20s across northwestern Oklahoma. That's where most of the precipitation is going to be sleet, northwestern Oklahoma into west central. But then this band from Altus, which is 30 degrees. Tipton is at 32 degrees. Storm chasers are very familiar with the Tipton location. Hobart, 29. Fort Cobb, 31. So definitely, we're talking about freezing rain out here happening near Oklahoma City, and to the especially the west side of Oklahoma City is getting rapidly accumulating freezing rain with moderate freezing rain coming down toward Minko as well. Fort Cobb, the Wichita Mountains, Medicine Park starting to drop below freezing as well. So we're going to be blasting through this environment, sampling this ice storm, and then we're going to head all the way down to the Gulf Coast to deploy that Surginator, multiple Surginators, Grand Island, probably the Mobile Bay area, maybe somewhere around Biloxi, and then also Dauphin Island. That's going to be where we're going to target that deployment. But first, we got to get through this ice storm. There it is. So I hope you guys enjoy this weather briefing, including a discussion of the soundings, a perfect textbook ice storm sounding there. This is an HRRR sounding, probably near the Clinton area this morning. And it actually shows a warm layer, a warm nose that is not that thick. So that's why you're getting sleet out there near the Elk City, Clinton area with those surface temperatures already in the 20s. But a little closer to Oklahoma City, you're getting pure freezing rain, hence those ice storm warnings that have been issued. And I'm going to head in that direction once the Surginator arrives. So I hope you guys enjoy my weather reports. Stay safe out there. We're going to go intercept this ice storm and Zeta, and we'll keep you updated. The Surginator science has been made possible by the Facebook supporter community. Please consider joining us over there. We do these live weather briefings. We're going to start with a storm chasing school next month, doing some educational material, some meteorology, forecasting, some tech stuff. We'll have Mark on discussing how to do some science as well. And just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for joining me this Monday morning. And we're about to fully activate chase mode here. And I'm about to head southeast, intercept that ice storm in the southern plains. And then from there, head down to the central Gulf Coast to intercept Zeta. Thank you, everybody. Never stop chasing.